Welcome to the Game Deflators Podcast, Season 2, Episode 3. I'm joined by co-host Ryan.
Thanks, John. Here at the Game Deflators, we talk about games that we're playing, games that we just picked up. We do a segment, Inflation Deflation, where we talk about an old game and tell you if it's worth your money or not, and any other gaming news going on.
Sounds good, man. So typically on the Game Deflators Podcast, we will open up with recent pickups. Unfortunately, this past week and a half, I've been out of town on travel, but I do intend to pick up a game this week. So I'm going to be grabbing Owlboy. It's by D-Pad Studio. Owlboy was released a good while back on PC and then had regular versions of the game come out. I decided to go ahead and get the collector's edition. It was limited to around 6,000 copies per console it was released on. And I figured, heck, why not? $70, 6,000 copies. Not too bad a deal, right? Unfortunately, it's been delayed since July. So I'm crossing my fingers there's no further delays on October 19th when it's supposed to come out. But we will see. And to my knowledge, there probably is a delay going on right now that I have no clue about. But overall, Owlboy is set in the Land of the Sky, and it's pretty much a set of islands that's undergone like a catastrophic event, and you're part of this owl humanoid race, and you play as this character named Otis, and overall his village has been attacked by a band of pirates. So what you're pretty much doing is trying to go on his journey to save your village, uncover truths about lost owls throughout the history of their race, and from a general 16-bit standpoint, this is pretty standard. So I'm a little excited to see how this all plays out. It should be a pretty quick game to beat. So that'll be pretty cool too, just given how busy I tend to be. The overall game, though, is set in a platformer type style, 16-bit, obviously. And you're picking up a variety of weapons and tossing them at enemies. You're going through puzzles, hoops, pretty much anything that older gamers grew up playing, this game has. It's received some great reviews via Metacritic and IGN, anything from 80 on up out of 100. So we'll see how this plays out. I'm pretty excited. So Ryan, did you get anything recently? Any recent pickups?
Yeah, so last week on the podcast, we were pretty sure that I would be, hours into Valkyria Chronicles 4 by now. I had talked before about how great the demo was and how excited I was, and I sat back the other day and I tried to just redo some of the demo to make sure that I wanted to throw my money at it. And I just couldn't get into it. It wasn't anything wrong with the game. I guess I'm just not in the mood for something like that right now. So I kind of took a step back and reevaluated my options. And I looked at, they just had a new enhanced edition of Disgaea 3 come out, and Disgaea 1. Yeah, and it's I've played that before, and that's a crazy game, but that's another tactical RPG that's got 100 hours worth of stuff to do in it, and as cool as it looks and as much fun as I had playing it before, I just didn't think I would really go for that either. So I tried to take some time and think about what I really wanted to play next. And I saw that they had Stick of Truth for $30 in the Switch eShop. So I picked that up because for those of you that don't know, episode 3 of South Park Season 22 just came out last week. I figured they had episode 3. We're having episode 3. I might as well check this out because it's been on my list of things to play for a long time. And I love South Park. And honestly, I've been kind of disappointed by the new season of it. And with everybody's reviews of Stick of Truth saying how funny it is, how much it is just like an episode of the show, I can tell you if you haven't played this and you're not really feeling the new season of South Park either, this will get you there. This is definitely the best South Park I've seen this year. And I'm loving every minute of it. It's fun, quirky. All the characters are there. It's set in, the neighborhood. The boys are all playing fantasy role-playing game. And you've got your standard warrior class, wizard class, priest class and Jew class to play as. You've got magical, battery shocks. You can dragon shout through a fart, get abducted by aliens. It's got so many South Park references, running around collecting Chimpokemon. I love it to death. It's also an RPG. I knew I wanted an RPG, but it's got some of that timed button pressing like you'd see in a Paper Mario game to up your defense and up your attack. So it's a little more engaging than just your standard turn-based RPG, and it's got some extra outside of combat mechanics that you can do. You can shoot enemies from afar to stun them so that when you go into battle, they're pre-stunned. It makes the battles a little easier. It's really not a challenging game. I mean, I'm only like 5-6 hours into it, and I'm already one-shotting most things. There's really not grinding, so it's not like I've been power leveling to get ahead of the curve. But it's so far, it's really good. I'm having a really good time. I think after this, I might go straight for Fractured But Whole, which I really wanted to play before, but I kind of wanted to check out Stick of Truth first, which is why I never really jumped into the Fractured But Whole. So, thinking about all this and, media tie-ins with games, last week, John had picked up City of Lost Children, and he's finally had a chance to watch the movie. John, what did you think about that?
I thought it was absolute garbage, actually. No, in all honesty, the movie itself was pretty interesting. So I didn't play the game yet. It's not something that I'm really interested in grabbing a hold of right now and just kind of jumping into. Plus, I got to get it buffed out. But the City of Lost Children is pretty much, there's like this evil, high intelligent guy that is living on an oil rig, and he's been abducting children and pretty much using them to engage in fear, and he's taking their tears so that way he can dream, because he has the inability to dream. And it's just really odd because you got like this group of misfits living in an oil rig, and they're all talking to this big brain that's in a container that pretty much gives them direction. And there's this guy that's an evil genius abducting kids. So it's just a super odd film. And it's actually a French film, so it was initially released, in French audio. And the interesting thing about this movie is they've dubbed over it in English, and one of the stars is Ron Perlman. So I was just talking to Ryan a little bit ago, and you have Ron Perlman sitting here who clearly speaks English, and they've dubbed over him with a really cheap Russian voice. So the whole time I'm just sitting there wondering why Ron Perlman is just not dubbed over his own voice. And Ryan did bring up a good point. It was probably too expensive to get the guy to redo his lines twice in English and in French. But besides the point, it is super annoying. Overall, Ron Perlman, he's in a carnival. His manager ends up, spoilers, I guess. His manager ends up dying and getting stabbed by a thief or whatever. And then he ends up in just this distraught feeling in a trailer, and he's got people coming after him for, he's protecting some kid, and this group from the oil rig comes in to try and abduct the child, and he's protecting the kid, and he somehow gets in league with these children, and it's just super odd, man. I honestly, the film was enjoyable to an extent, but it started to get kind of old. And by old, I mean it was also an old film. I want to say it was released out in the early 90s, maybe late 80s. And 95, this film was released. And so, yeah, man, I'll have to have you watch it, but I just cannot get over the fact that Ron Perlman was dubbed over with a crappy Russian accent.
Well, and I mean, especially like Ron Perlman's the voice of, Hellboy, and the voice of the the narrator in all the Fallout games. Like, he's got this iconic voice, and just seeing him and hearing a cheap knockoff from somebody else is weird.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the things that really set me off most about the film is like, if you're going to have the guy in there and he's pretty much an iconic American actor, at least in this point, maybe back then he wasn't as big, I suppose. yeah, it was really off-putting to me to watch this film dubbed over. I would have much rather actually watched it in French with the subtitles. But it does get me into kind of a thought as far as, a fun topic this week is, are there any games that you've played based on movies that you truly enjoyed, or maybe movies that are based off video games? I can say, like, in the last few years, we've had quite a few come out. We've had a newer reboot of Tomb Raider, which I thought was actually pretty good despite some of the reviews. Rampage, which I really want to see. Warcraft came out a few years ago. Prince of Persia, obviously, 2010. We've had Wreck-It Ralph, Assassin's Creed, Silent Hill, the Resident Evil films. So there's a ton of movies that have been based off video games that have come out. Is there anything really that, stems out to you that you really enjoyed, or maybe even a game based off of a movie that you enjoyed?
I do. I hate watch the Resident Evil movies. Like, they're not great movies. They're very loosely tied to the games, which I think is better than trying to straight up recreate the games. Like, they're just a fun thing to watch, but I would never like put them on the top of any list or anything. One movie that I really liked that I don't think got a really good reception from what I heard was Final Fantasy 15 Kingsglaive. When I got Final Fantasy 15 finally last year, I was super stoked to play it. I mean, how long had we all waited for Versus 13? 10 years for this game to come out. So in the time that it took to actually install on my PS4, I watched Kingsglaive. I watched the 5-part anime series tied to the game, and I think I still had time for dinner. But I really like that. Mortal Kombat classic, Street Fighter classic. Those are both a little on the cheesy side. I think the first Silent Hill movie was actually pretty good though. And oh gosh, there's been so many things that have come out.
Yeah, personally, in the last few years, I'd say one of my all-time favorites that's come out is the Ratchet and Clank animated film. That very much brought back a lot of nostalgia for me. I enjoyed playing the Ratchet and Clank games throughout, I guess, middle school is when they were coming out for me. And yeah, the movie itself was very much like the first game, just in this whole feature presentation type mode. So I was stoked. Fiance fell asleep twice while watching it, but I sat through 2 days in a row, and I just loved every moment of it. And I want to say it got pretty decent reviews. Another movie that's pretty interesting is A Wizard. And I know it's an older film, pretty cheesy, but it's essentially based off of a Nintendo tournament where a kid with, I want to say he's got a disability, goes forward and is able to go ahead and battle in the, Nintendo's prestigious championship gaming series throughout the nation. So if you haven't seen The Wizard yet, definitely check that out. It's got a lot of NES nostalgia for a lot of folks. Movie was released in, I think it was 1989 or late 80s. So definitely check that one out if you haven't done so yet.
And even more so than these games based straight off of movies, that's really cool is just how, gaming has come more into the mainstream. I mean, Ready Player One came out this year. I was super skeptical. I had heard that the book was like, okay. I'm not much of a reader, so I never really checked it out. But man, that movie did some cool stuff. I mean, it was definitely just chock full of references and nostalgia stuff for, people who have been into gaming for a long time. But it's really cool to see things like that and Wreck-It Ralph really, showing the broader world in, full featured, top of the line movies, what classic gaming is all about, and show that, the gamers are kind of the future in some sense in these movies.
Yeah, and I really do hope that a lot of these movies that are coming out kind of take that approach like the Marvel films in the last few years, where we can start seeing a higher quality of gaming movie come out. So, I mean, you had movies like Angry Birds and Doom and a lot of flops like Prince of Persia. There's a lot of movies that are out there just complete trash that are based off of games. So I'm really hoping that movies like Ready Player One and the new Tomb Raider, despite some reviews, become more prevalent out there, and we get a higher quality film. Now, kind of turning the tables a little bit on games that are based off of movies, and I mean, we're talking about just your generic ports. I'd say, and this may not technically be based off a movie, but the Spider-Man game on PS1, I'd say that was probably growing up. That was probably one of my favorite games, man. And I mean, granted, it's based off of a comic book too, but that game in general was a real blast for me. Um, some other games that came out after movies were like the Transformers titles. Wasn't a big fan of that. If you're looking at games based off of TV shows, you have the Digimon series that was released. That actually was a pretty damn good series of games. Is there anything that kind of points out to you, man, as like a top tier title or something that you really enjoyed based off of films?
I mean, GoldenEye's legendary for, movie tie-in games. Um, and also the Star Wars games. I mean, a lot of them are, more extended universe stuff and, not necessarily canonical, but, they're definitely a part of what that is. And they're, KOTOR is definitely something that, people hold in really high regard. The Lord of the Rings games that came out for the Xbox, those were really good. I remember playing tons of that with my friends, going through trying to get all the, different little bits of additional world that they couldn't show in the movies, or just other ideas that it's like, that really fleshes it out. It really makes the world come alive in a cool way. And I think that rather than trying to one-to-one port, that's what these movies to games and games to movies should be really trying to do. They should be trying to show you the same world, but in a new way that the other medium couldn't do. And I think there's something coming out that you're excited about.
Yeah, man. So we saw some leaked footage on the new Harry Potter RPG, and leaked being the key thing here is we don't for sure know that this is actually going to be an RPG. And some of the footage that we saw so far looked pretty sick. So I'm excited from the standpoint of having read the books and then watched all the movies. Say what you want about me, but there's a whole generation of us that was our life, and I like the idea of being able to explore the wizarding world in an open world environment like a Fallout or an Oblivion. And I'm not going to use the S word, also by Bethesda. So not going to give them credit for anything. So overall, looking at the footage, I'm really excited from the standpoint of, and I said standpoint twice, but being able to potentially play as maybe a Death Eater, or deciding what type of wizard I want to play as, being in a certain house, learning different spells. I wonder how enveloped they're going to put us into this wizarding world. Are we going to get to go to the human world, or are they going to tie in like the new movies that have come out, based on the monster manual and such? Are we going to have the ability to play Quidditch in side games similar to like a Final Fantasy X Blitzball? What is the full extent of this game? And it's pretty exciting, and I hope it comes out in the next year or so, or 2 years at least, because it'll definitely be a day one purchase for me. Is there anything that we saw a pretty good amount of footage and still shots from that trailer? Is there anything that kind of came out to you or that you're really excited to see in this type of game?
I've never been giant Harry Potter fan. I mean, I read most of the books, I've seen most of the movies. It's thanks, John. It's a fun universe. I definitely give it credit for that. I really did like the first of the new movies that came out, the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I thought that was interesting take, and kind of like what I was saying before, it shows more of the world. Like, I really enjoy the world of Harry Potter more than I enjoy the story of Harry Potter himself. It's a great story, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking it, but I'm real excited to just go to these places and see these things myself.
Yeah, I think that's really what intrigues me most about the game. is just the available space that you can explore, or the idea of it, that is what we're potentially going to be able to do with this type of game. Having played a number of games like a Fallout or an Elder Scrolls style game, uh, I like the idea of being able to explore. I mean, are they going to put in the different magical realms and stuff that we saw in like the Goblet of Fire books, where you had like that Russian group of wizards from a different land? Like, are we going to be able to go as deep as exploring that? Hopefully it's not flipping DLC and you have to download those worlds, because that pissed me off. But just there's just I don't know, it's just intriguing, man, having the thoughts of what can be with this type of title. And having grown up with those titles, and a lot of people wanting their letters, which I promise I'm not expecting a letter anytime soon, and people that wish they were in that type of realm, this is really a way to put them in that. And it's, I'm happy that it's happening now versus like 10 years ago when the books first came out, because really I would not want to play this as a PS1 game. I would want to play this as a PlayStation 4 or even next generation game.
Yeah, I mean, if you go out and check out the footage, I mean, it's not like the best quality, but you could tell the graphics look really good, and to be able to see everything rendered in such a way is going to be way better than any of the old Harry Potter games that came out. I mean, there's been plenty of licensed titles for Harry Potter in the past, but the level of quality that they're putting into this really makes it far and above those usual cash grab tie-in games that come out once a year when the movie does, and try to skip past all of the downtime and try to fill it with, like, that's the big difference between games and movies, and what gives them such a hard time is, like, if you got an action game, a lot of that is the action, the combat, but nobody wants to sit in a movie and watch, fight scene after fight scene after fight scene. I mean, to top off poignant moments and have grand fights and cool choreography, that's an excellent part of a movie, but you're not going to be skewering through low-level mobs for half a movie trying to grind your levels.
Yeah, well, I mean, you might not have to, because at this day and age, you may have loot boxes where you can purchase different wands and purchase different brooms, and then not have to level grind, because you'll get your Gringotts coins through your loot boxes. So we'll really see how this plays out. And I hope to God that somebody making this game does not hear our podcast and says, "That's a great idea, John." And then then we're screwed. So, dude, I just realized we didn't do what I'm currently playing, and so to go back into what I'm currently playing, I am still playing Elemental Gimmick Gear, or EGG, on the Sega Dreamcast. So for those of you that didn't catch us last week, an Elemental Gimmick Gear is pretty much an egg-looking robot that the guy can jump into, and there's a bunch of different spells that you can use. So kind of going into the story so far and what I've done. The Elemental Gimmick Gear, your main character is named Logan. He's from 5,000 years in the past. He was stuck in his EGG and was recently resurrected, in a sense, or brought back from his, comatose, essentially. And he starts out with trying to defend this city from a pirate group that comes in. So now we're on a binge of pirates and post-apocalyptic here. So he basically goes through to this like fog tower. He defeats this pirate guy that's in there in his own EGG. Mind you, everybody, it seems, in the whole world has an EGG throughout. So he defeats this pirate, brings him back, and then decides to continue going on his adventure. Well, turns out, and we'll have lots of spoilers here, turns out he's actually from a moon colony from 5,000 years ago, because the Earth was destroyed during a major world war, and they went up to the moon to live, and then they released like this mother type of purifier system onto the world. Well, the purifier system became corrupted, kind of similar to like Horizon Zero Dawn when I was playing that, and it begins to like destroy the planet pretty much, and wanting to cause extinction and everything else. So the world is livable now, but it's beginning to get corrupted by this, they call it Psycho Mother. And so at this point in the game, I've met up and kind of seen different memories of my past, like flashbacks, and it turns out like I'm this crazy, soldier in a sense, that worked with his buddy Omega, and your technical name is Beta, in the moon colony. And there was a meltdown, and Beta, pretty much Logan in this case, was trapped for 5,000 years. And so now that he's awakened, he's come back and he's trying to stop Psycho Mother. At this point in the game, I just launched a 5,000-year-old rocket back into space and landed on the moon colony. And so now I'm currently in the process of figuring out all the puzzles associated with the moon colony. So a cool thing about this game, again, if you weren't listening last week, is you are in an action RPG style game. So there's no hit points. There's no, damage being dealt in terms of numbers popping up. You do, however, level up from these capsules that you find, which increase your attack, defense, and your ability to hold more spell slots. And then you have a different, just a wide variety of different things like fire, ice. You could spin in your EGG with fire. You have like this plasma move that just like sparks out like radiation everywhere and kills anything within its range. You can bust the ground with like a rock move so far. So I'm about 6 to 7 hours into the game, and I would say so far I'm really enjoying it. The music is cool. The artwork for its time is pretty cool. The CGI is not half bad, given that it was released back in '99. And just overall, I'm really enjoying this game, and I'm hoping the next time that we record, I have this thing beat.
Speaking of having things beat, I finally got through the messenger. Oh my God. I decided about, 3 hours away from being done with the game, I'm going to go through and I'm going to just 100% this thing. I'm going to go get all of the challenge tokens. And it took me a little while, only so much time in the day to play. So I should have beaten this a while ago, but I didn't. And now I'm finally done with it. I had a really good time with this game. Going through the challenge rooms, like, you don't get the coolest thing for completing it, but what you do get is the reward of the challenge itself. Like, I really got into the platforming and all of the fluidity of the movement in this. I mean, it's not going to be as good as, the fluidity of the new Spider-Man, but with the double jump mechanic and tying into the glides and the grapple onto walls, like, you really get to the point where you can move around in a cool way and really feel in control. And I was just really wanting to see, okay, what room am I going to get to that is finally going to be too tough for me to get through? And I had to bang my head against a wall a time or two, but by the time I was picking up those last few coins, just one shot in each of the rooms, no problem. So it was very rewarding. However, the final boss of the game, the final form of the final boss of the game, comes down to one of those Dragon Ball Z laser versus laser pushing, who's going to win, who's got more power. And it's a spam mash B event. Just mash, mash, mash. And, I'm not a huge fan of QTEs. I'm not a huge fan of mashing stuff. I get it. But this was just too much, man. Like, it was too much. I seriously had to mash harder than I've ever mashed. I had to reach deep down in my thumbs to pull this off.
Did it remind you of Mario Party mini games at all?
Yeah, it did when you're up against, hard level Peach and she's kicking your ass every mini game. Yeah, pretty much. So it took me a couple, like, not even a couple tries. Like, I had to go in and you can't pause. So I had to hit the home button to back all the way out of the game to give my hand a rest to get through this. And it was just ridiculous.
I just want folks to know that he said he needed to give his hand a rest during the game. I think he's lying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Yeah, man, I definitely think I need to play that game at some point, given your experience. And then what I'll do is I'll defer to you when that final boss comes through, since you're so good with your hand, apparently, and you can go ahead and button mash for me. Um, so at this point, let's go ahead and discuss our inflation deflation, man. We decided to play, and I'm gonna just be upfront here. Ryan said he had never played Dreamcast, apparently, so I decided to go ahead and pick up, or not pick up, but I grabbed off my shelf Millennium Soldier Expendable, or really just Expendable, on the Sega Dreamcast. And it's actually a port of a Windows game. It was released in '99 on the Dreamcast and 99 on Windows as well, and later released in, I think, 2012. Yeah, 2012 on the Android console or Android system on their Play Store. And so Expendable is like a top-down run and gun shooter where you play as two super soldiers, and there's this alien race that has come through, and you're pretty much there to defeat the alien race. It kind of reminds me of really, well, any top-down shooter, but kind of Contra in a sense, because you're picking up a variety of different weapons, and you're in this top-down mode, and being able to go really any direction you want in this top-down mode, and shoot your enemies with rockets and lots of bullets and a whole bunch of stuff. The only difference is in a game like this, you actually lose ammo, and you have a health bar. So yeah, I thought overall it was a pretty cool game. I'll defer to you first, man, since you hadn't played a Dreamcast game yet, and which is still shocking to me. And you can give us your opinion on the feel of the Dreamcast controller for this particular game, and really your overall thoughts.
Yeah, I totally missed the Dreamcast. I was never really a Sega. The only Sega thing I ever owned was a Game Gear, and I think I could probably count on two hands the number of times that I had 6 AA batteries to power the damn thing. But it was as fun as I kind of could hoped. I actually do like the feel of the Dreamcast controller. I mean, it's a little bit square on. Like, I wish it kind of, flexed out at the bottom to give you a more natural hold. But, hey, it's an old console. They did what they did, and I still really like the idea of the those little memory cards that you could play mini games and stuff on. But that's something else. So the Expendables, when Expendable. Sorry, I wanted to make this another movie tie-in game, but I guess not. The intro was really quirky and weird. It has this like old CGI graphics, but it kind of has like a Oddworld feel to it because the characters look so kind of like goofy. They've got these weird facial expressions, but there's kind of all this horrible looking science going on around it, while you've got your naked soldier being prepped and then like locked in and shipped out to this planet to fight these alien hordes. We were enjoying it for a while. I mean, we were cruising through it pretty good, not really much trouble in the first level. And then the second level came, and I just started dying left and right because it's weird. The camera focuses in and follows on player 1. So if you're player 2, you can walk outside of the screen and it'll show you an arrow indicating how far you've gone, but the screen doesn't expand or contract depending on your closeness to player 1. So if you get off screen, it's real easy to just take bullets.
Yeah, I didn't have as bad of an experience because I was player 1, so it wasn't too bad for me. I think we got through, what was it, like 3 or 4 levels in the game within like a 1 hour time, three levels. So the game itself was kind of fun at first. I mean, different weapons, you're blowing things up, there's parts flying everywhere. There's a lot of cool bosses in the game itself. But overall, once we got to that 3rd level, I'm like, okay, I've had enough. Like, this is, it's fun. It's nice to play. But if I had to sit there and go through like 10 levels or something, I don't know how many levels are in it because we didn't get that far. I don't think I would really enjoy it as much. So we should probably look up the price point on this game, actually, man, because that's something that I'm interested to see. Um, the game itself, we probably could have beat it in its entirety if we would have actually just like sat back and played for 8 hours in a day, if that. Might even be able to beat it in just a few hours. Um, a lot of it was us just kind of getting used to the controls and really just hammering through specific levels, getting acquainted with the overall structure. The game itself is really dark. That could be like visually dark. It was just kind of hard to see where to go at times. That could probably be based off of the fact that it's on a 4K TV versus an older tube TV. But yeah, just I don't know, man. Did you have anything additional with at least a visual aspect that kind of bugged you?
It was real dark. I like to turn up the brightness even on, horror games sometimes, just so that I can see like all the work that went into the art. And this game actually got like uh, you know, mostly 70s from what I saw on the reviews, and a lot of it was praising the graphics. And I mean, it probably was pretty good graphics for the time, but I don't know how much of that graphics you could actually see. It was a little dark, a little muddy for me.
Yeah, I'd fully agree with you. So visually, I'd say that we would probably grade this to be pretty low. Now, yes, it is on a bigger TV, and yes, it's a game that's nearly 20 years old. But at the same time, Ryan and I do play quite a few games that are older than 20 years, so we can appreciate decent graphics for that era. And this just really wasn't that great. From a gameplay standpoint, I didn't feel the controls were as fluid as I would have liked in a game of this style. We'll get back to you on the actual fluidity of the controls. The actual gameplay with the guns and rockets and everything else, I thought was pretty fun. I would give that a pretty high score. And then the actual timing of enemies coming out was just the right difficulty, so it wasn't terrible. And then the boss battles were actually pretty good too. So I guess you did kind of touch up on controls, right, man? Where you discussed how you were kind of thrown out on the side and it didn't really expand out per se. It just kind of said, hey, Ryan, you're over here in a corner. Here's an arrow. By the way, there might be enemies killing you and you have no idea. Versus in my experience, it was always focused on me. But with the actual controls, just to get a little more into detail with that, it just didn't have that right feel. Like if I was trying to shoot at like a 45-degree angle towards some other enemies, it was just kind of difficult. It would shoot you into like 90 degrees or it would go down like 180. Like it was really odd how all of that worked out. Did you have anything else on that, man, before we jump into what this might cost some people if they wanted to check it out?
It said that it came out for Android, and I've been trying to find it. I can't find it in the Play Store. So I don't know if maybe it's not hosted there anymore, or if maybe it's released under a different title and I didn't see that. But, I don't know how much it goes for on Android. And honestly, I don't think I would recommend playing it on Android. Dark and tiny is not a way to play a game.
That there's an innuendo in there somewhere. So anybody that's interested, you can pick up Expendable on the PS1 for about $6 loose. You can pick it up complete for about $11.50, and new if you really want to go that route and crack it open for some strange reason, $21. But on the Dreamcast, it's slightly cheaper on a complete in box right now. You're looking at like $7.50 loose, and complete is going for about $10.50. So really, if you want to check this game out, it's on the cheap. It's hopefully we don't do what other people do and games start going up in price when we review them. But it's, I don't know, man. If I was playing this game fresh and somebody said, here, you can check out this game complete in box right now for $11, I might give them like $3 for it. That's personally where I would stand. I don't think it's worth the $10 that it's currently set at. For me, just now when we were playing that game, I didn't get enough enjoyment out of that title to say, yeah, I'm happy spending $10 on this title right now, plus any shipping costs that come through.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that it's worth the money this time around. Usually we try to have somebody who's, a pro and somebody who's a con, but I think we're both just not sold this week. I mean, even if I got the game for free, I don't think it would be worth my time to actually play it.
Yeah, and to be a little more transparent, I probably did get this game for free out of a lot that I might have purchased at one point of a Dreamcast. So, uh, yeah, I mean, it's obviously sat on my shelf for the last probably 5-6 years, and we just now went ahead and played it. And I'm kind of happy it's been sitting on my shelf for 5 to 6 years, in all honesty.
So another 5 to 6 years of dust for this one, people. We're going to call it a pass.
Yep. So that will be deflated. Now, a little preview into the next week. We are going to be playing the NES game Monster in My Pocket. So keep an eye out for that when we go ahead and release our Inflation Deflation. That title, surprisingly, has gone up in price quite a bit in the last few years, and I'm interested to see why.
And we'll let you know next week if it's going to be worth your money or not. So until then, I'm Ryan.
And I'm John.
And this has been the Game Deflators Podcast.